All right, we're live, Dan.
Yeah. Well, had to change things up a little bit because we keep getting demonetized for all kinds of crazy stuff. Well, anyway, welcome to the show, the Permaculture Podcast, where we discuss permaculture preparedness and practical living. And thanks everybody for being in the house. How you doing, son?
Pretty good. How are you?
This is good. This is episode 143. Man, it's really messing me up not having the music right now because I cue so much off of having the music. Anyway, as always, this episode brought to you by Hickory Ridge Soap from twooldcrowshomestead.com.
Turn that simp into a pimp.
Bam! Heaven's Harvest, y'all. 10% off with promo code PERMA. And good night, man. I'm trying to get some of those folks on the show right now, and I'm really looking forward to making that happen because they got a whole lot of insider information with what's going on with the food right now. I want to thank everybody in the chat right now. Big shout out to everybody out there checking us out.
And don't forget to hit the like button, the thumbs up button.
Yeah, be sure to do that because it's going to let everybody know at YouTube to go ahead and start shadow banning us immediately.
Right.
So yeah, make sure you do that because it helps. Well, I guess it helps us out. Anyway, 10% off with the promo code PERMA at Heaven's Harvest. And if you'd like to go check us out on the Fountain app, you can listen to all your podcasts over there. And you can, additionally to listening to them, you can also drop some SATs on some PIMPs. And SATs are basically a derivation of Bitcoin. And remember, PIMP stands for Permaculture is my passion. Once again, thanks everybody in the house tonight. So we're going to jump straight into the farm news. Look, this one I've been meaning to talk about for weeks. And I'm sure, hey, y'all holler if you hear me in the chat with this. I don't know if this is just something going on in Western North Carolina, but you cannot find kosher salt anywhere.
Right.
In fact, I had to go to one of the bakeries we work with, and I asked them, I said, hey, where on earth are you guys able to get some kosher salt? And they just started laughing like, dude, we don't know what's going on. We can't find it anywhere. And we've checked everywhere. In fact, they found one really obscure place. And then they hooked us up with a box of some of this kosher salt.
I bet the Asian market has it.
No,
they got everything.
Well, I didn't get a chance to look because it was like Grand Central Station in that place. I did look and I was like, okay, man, it's just so doggone. And then I don't know what they're thinking in this place. I know they're thinking they can get in more product, but you can barely get a cart down one way in those very narrow aisles. So everybody and the great grandmother was in there, but I don't know what's going on. I don't know why you cannot find kosher salt anywhere in Western North Carolina.
I don't get it. I mean, I remember a couple of weeks back you sent me to the store to get some, and I couldn't find it then either. Yeah, and that was at like of the Ingalls. I think that was the one that makes the most money. So they have everything in stock usually.
Your mom looked online, can't find any places online that sell it. Can't, Azure Standard, you name it, can't find kosher salt. Man. So I don't know what's going on.
Fed Up said that they found some at Dollar Tree, but just very little. So maybe that was a way to, maybe that's a place to check out.
It's always the places off the beaten path. You know, everybody thinks, you know, I can't remember who brought it up, but when they were talking about preparedness items, and if you were looking to find batteries, and for some reason, I can't remember what the event, they were talking about when a hurricane comes in, and everybody thinks they got to go to a convenience store, Walmart, the typical place. And they were like, good night, man. One of the best places you can go to get survival supplies, believe it or not, was Toys R Us when they were still around. I don't know if they're still around anymore.
I don't think they are. I don't think they're around anymore.
But it's some of those places like, you know, they're mentioning there. It's always in those off the wall places that you would never guess. And then they're fully stocked. So I don't know. I never thought about going to a dollar store for kosher salt. I would have never even thought they had it, but man, I'll definitely have to. Yeah, that's a weird way to start a podcast, but I'm just saying there's some weird stuff going on out there, y'all. I mean, like everything, if you go to a store and you buy something, check the doggone dates on that stuff. For some reason, I can't seem to figure that one out either. Everything is either expired or about to get expired. And it's not like we live in, you know, that's pretty common when you go to a grocery store in the hood, but we don't live anywhere near a hood anywhere in this part of North Carolina. If anything, some of those Nouveau Almondine thin crust, stick your pinky up bottled water types, those are the ones that live here.
Yeah.
And so it's not like you got the typical problems of the hood. So for some reason, I can't figure it out. And items on the shelf, just about everything is either expired or about to be expired. In fact,
yeah.
I went there and I had to go to the deli. I was getting some, like, I can't remember what it was, but I was getting something for your mom. And I looked on the bags as I'm checking out. I think it was like some lunch meat or something. And I'm like, well, first of all, stupid me. I mean, I am a butcher. I could make some lunch meat if I wanted, but, didn't have any of that. And it was expired. As I was checking out, I'm like, oh, hold on. I got to go back.
Yeah.
So
even lunch meat's expired.
Yeah. It's crazy. I don't know what's going on. So if anybody else out there, good night. Let me know if you know what's up on the kosher salt, because even Azure Standard, like I said, nobody seems to have it.
The lunch meat's expired, but the milk you find at the store expires in like January of next year.
Yeah, I don't.
It's weird.
I don't know what's going on with that, but hey, man, things are getting crazy and crazier. So that's not exactly farm news, but I just thought I'd put the feelers out there. Maybe somebody else knows where you can find some kosher salt. So other things I've been doing today is like, okay, so pretty much worked on, since the weather's halfway decent, worked on some compost extract. If you don't know what that is, folks, I really want to point that out to you, is that if you need a way to extend whatever compost you have on, whatever compost you have, all you have to do is make an extract out of it, and you can go way, way further. So what does that mean exactly? Let's say you made some really good compost, but you don't have a whole lot of it, and you want to make sure you get all those benefits. Well, what you can do is put it in a 400 micron bag, let's say a 5-gallon bucket full of water, dip it down in there, squeeze it, try to get all those microorganisms out of there, which is what you're doing.
And it's just a couple handfuls of compost, right?
Yeah,
that you're adding to that bag.
Yeah, I probably ought to do a video. In fact, I might
think
go
you
ahead.
did.
Well, I don't know if I've gone in any great detail, because even if it's marginal compost, what we figured out is that when you go through the oxygenation process, basically taking air and sticking it up through there, well, your bad organisms or the anaerobic organisms can't live in an oxygen-rich environment. So even if you had marginal compost, now I haven't heard this taught anywhere, it's just an idea that I came up with, and it seems to be working quite well. If you can take some of that stuff, look at it under a microscope, you find out that just by putting it in an oxygen-rich environment, at least for a couple hours, that, and it can't just be any kind of bubbler, but once you put it in that environment, you basically have only the good stuff behind. So you can take that, stick it in water buckets, stick it in cans, whatever the case may be, and you can make a very small bit of compost go a very long way. And that was exactly what I was doing today. So, I mean, we got compost piles going on and on and on and on. And the idea being is that you can stretch it even further, and you can even get the benefits of it even sooner when you put it in an aqueous form like that. So one of those things you might want to think about, putting around your trees and your gardens and all that good stuff.
Well, that might
getting in the winter.
That's handy for people who can't make a whole lot of compost. Let's say you're like a single older woman or something like that, and like one compost took a lot of effort and a lot of time for you to make, or you don't have an access to a lot of carbon or nitrogen sources, and that one compost pile is really all you could make for the season. This is a way to compound it, to spread it, make it go even further.
It could be if you had to buy it. Let's say you were able to find some really, really good compost. And folks, everything we've looked at under the microscope, all of it's junk. Anyway, Life Done Free, what's up? The Pimp Clan. Yeah, I want to give a shout out to Tag. Go check out his channel over there, y'all. And I know I'm missing a whole lot of people that are going on in the chat right now. Joint Air said, I just saw the video we did on that subject. Yeah, I want to go in a little bit more detail, because here's another thing you could do. Let's say you did find a good place to get compost, okay? But let's say you can't afford a whole lot of it. Well, this is one good way. I mean, and like I said, y'all, it's a crapshoot. This is why we're trying to encourage everybody out there to go make your stuff, because when you buy it from a lot of these folks, man, I had no idea how many charlatans there are in this world.
Yeah.
And when you look at that stuff, man, they got the good bag that makes you feel good that this stuff is really going to work out. And then when you look at it under the microscope, some of this stuff was just downright hydrophobic, meaning that it repelled water.
Yeah. Most of it, or a lot of the like small batch local stuff, just seemed to be organic matter with a nematode inoculation added to it. Infusion.
Yeah, that's all it was. And everything we looked at under the microscope, so it helps having these skills. But let's just say you made some yourself. You don't have the time. Everybody has busy lives these days. So let's say you got one good compost pile. That's really what the point I want to bring home, is that you don't need a whole lot of it. You think you got to spread out that compost. No, make an extract. And hopefully the video I'll come out with tomorrow, I'll go into greater detail about how to do that and how you could stretch even a 1 cubic yard pile. You would be shocked at how many acres you can cover with that if you just do it the right way. Chef Keith Snow in the house as well.
Hey,
I'm missing a lot of y'all. I can't even see this screen. It's so far away, but hey, thanks everybody for coming in. And like I said, once again, hit that thumbs up. Tells YouTube to go ahead and suppress us.
If you hand me your iPad, I can get that squared away for you.
What?
I can get so you can see the live chat.
Nope. No? We ain't switching in the middle of the show, man. I got this thing set up to where I need on other things. So anyway, working on the next compost pile. That's another thing. Right now, y'all, this is a great time of year to get hopping and popping on your compost. The reason why is that carbon is easy to find. Now I'm speaking in generalities here. The carbon that you need is easy to find in the form of, let's say, leaves and stuff like that.
In the northern hemisphere.
Yeah. And your nitrogen, if you're going to use grass clippings and stuff like that, you could still get that. So this is why it's an ideal time. Plus, it's not freezing. And even if it were, it really doesn't matter if you make a compost pile big enough. As long as you're over a cubic yard, I'd say closer to 2 cubic yards, you're going to maintain the heat. So you got to have all that stuff going on. But right now, look, y'all, they make nitrogen-based fertilizers through the Haber-Bosch process, okay? You got to have petroleum products in order to do that. I'm not dogging that process. I'm just saying it's a never-ending roller coaster. Just like my man Tag from Life Done Free also always says, if you want to get out from, he has a term for it. I wish I could remember the name of it right now, but basically, you want to eliminate any ability of anybody having sway over your life. And if you're on that nitrogen buying your inputs from any kind of store, farmhouse, supply store, whatever the case may be, well, you're on that roller coaster. And plus, at the end of the day, all you're really doing with those, what's he say here? Okay, yeah, I guess I missed it there. Yeah, I'm missing a lot of it. My eyes ain't that great. But the point being is that as many things that you can eliminate that you have to buy, if you can produce it on your place and we show you how to do it, like I said, it costs you $1 to go check it out on Patreon, where we went step by step on how to do it, an easy kind of way to do it. You can do that. But look, as long as you're on that roller coaster of having to buy nitrogen-based fertilizers or whatever fertilizers you need, well, you're always going to be stuck to that system. Just having the ability to read only enables you to be a higher functioning slave if you don't have a means to direct your brain to know what's useful and what isn't, what's true and what isn't. Well, it's the same exact thing when it comes for a lot of these processes here. If you learn how to compost, if you go into the nitty-gritty of composting, you don't need those fertilizers. If your plants have a symbiosis with the microorganisms in the ground, which is part of what we teach, and as long as you never spray chemicals on there, somebody doesn't spray them on you, you really don't need anything else other than nature.
Put it this way, the more you learn about compost, the less work you're going to have to do on your grazing, on your gardening, on your larger crops, all of it. The more you know about composting, the more you know about how to increase your soil life, the easier everything is going to get.
Stroke, that's what it is. The stroke they have on your life, and that's what composting, like one of the shorts I put out today is regarding butchery. It's little things like that. You don't have to know it all. You just need little bits and pieces, and that's what we're going to cover in the main topic today in greater detail. You don't need to know all of the story. Hopefully you get a group like Tag has out there where you got a group of mutual assistance, which I think is the best way to go about it, because when you live in a communal lifestyle and everybody's all shacked up on one person's, you're always going to have that thing where somebody's doing too much, somebody's not doing enough. But if you have mutual exchange with one another, then, it's, that's the basis that it works on, basically agorism. So, think about those things. Think about those ways that'll get you off of the plantation, so to speak. All right, so like I said, building the next compost pile. I'm going to be building them nonstop all through the winter for a whole variety of reasons that'll unfold in time. So, yeah, I got a different shirt on today. I'm usually wearing Eric Sider's shirt, and he just sent a couple of them in the mail for the baby.
Yeah, they're cute. Yeah, me and the baby are going to match with some of our permaculture shirts now. She has some permaculture onesies.
Yeah.
They're cute.
Yeah, so go check that out. Hey, oh, snap. Mr. Permaculture Orchard himself, Stefan Sokoviak, is in the house, y'all. Look, if you're not subscribed to his channel and you want to know anything, he's got a great course that I need to get into. I'm just got a lot of irons in the fire right now. Look, y'all, that is well, yeah. I mean, that is the man over there, y'all. He's inspired so many things I've done in my life and had the great pleasure and honor of going up to Canada. I know a lot of you have seen those videos. Well, anyway, he's in the live right now. And
yeah, y'all need to go click on his channel and subscribe to him. He's awesome.
If you don't know yet, you don't know what you're missing, because I'm telling you what, he is the man. And by the way, Stefan, I want to say thanks a million for those plums that I allegedly brought back from Canada that might allegedly be doing very, very well in all those places that I allegedly planted those. So, got
a few plants we're not supposed to have.
Yeah. So Canadian border security, you're slipping. Same thing. Yeah. Same thing with the U.S. border security. You know what? If you can sit here and allow any and everybody to cross, from the southern end, I think you wouldn't mind if I allegedly brought a few contraband trees back across the border, and I may have allegedly gotten them somewhere up in Canada. But
they're gonna get some search warrants for weed and be sorely disappointed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No hooter bandits on this property. Anyway, got a different shirt on today, and it's from the Permaculture podcast. I was on with those guys a little while ago, and they were on here. So, the thing that blew me away is I was listening. I text me and Raul, basically one of the hosts of the, and by the way, Stephen, you might be interested. There's a Canadian host on there also, Alex. These guys are great. And it was really, really, really great being on with those guys. They were a joy to be around. And honestly, I want to give a shout out to Raul because really and truthfully, he's been mentoring me in a lot of information that I don't know a whole lot about. And it's been a real pleasure. So go check out the Permaculture podcast. They got some really, really awesome stuff over there. And as always, I try to support other people in the space, whether it's a podcaster. Hey, Stephen, you need to come out with some shirts, homie. Yeah. Come out with some shirts. I got one up here. You might like, hey, I'd love for you to wear this all over Canada. It says Black Locusts Matter. So
but the Permaculture podcast, follow them on Instagram as well if you have one, because they post some pretty interesting stuff that definitely gets them shadow banned.
Yeah, but you know what was really awesome, and I didn't see it coming, man. I was listening to the program today, and they said they were going back and forth, which, what's your, and something I wouldn't mind doing with you maybe in the next program. It was like, what's your favorite movie? Well, it kind of broke it up a little bit. We could talk permaculture all day, but it kind of broke up, I thought it was really interesting because a lot of their likes were mine as well. Like, who's your favorite fighter? Who's your favorite boxer? Who's this other thing? And then they asked, well, what's your favorite podcast? And they said the Permaculture Pimpcast. And man, you could have knocked me over with a feather. I was so incredibly honored. Wow. And it's been a joy. And I love their content. I mean, it's may not be there for everybody, but I know I'm digging it and I'm learning a whole lot. And in the future, I'm going to maybe let y'all know what I'm finding out, what I'm learning. All right, so before we get into Pastor Lon, y'all, well, I had somebody here I was supposed to let you know. Basically, not Kentucky, but Mountain Readiness, they're going to be having another festival in May. Hopefully, we'll remember to list that down below. I'm going to be there teaching and a number of others. And remember,
I think it already is. I think it already is listed down below. Okay.
Well, yeah, definitely go sign up for that.
It is.
And use the link we have on there because I get credit for it. It helps a little bit. But honestly, y'all, these festivals, and this is one of the great ones, man. I couldn't believe how many special operators and stuff like that. I'm not going to be doing any permaculture classes. In fact, last time I taught homestead knot tying. So it's a lot of the stuff I learned up in Canada, stuff I learned in Alaska, stuff I learned in Panama, stuff I learned all over this planet. And it basically adapted it to the farm life. And a lot of people really dug that class, which really shocked me. All right, y'all. With that said, we're going to go straight into homesteading pastor, my pastor. Oh, Pastor Long.
Hold on, Dad. That's not a button.
Okay.
I thought you were about to press a button.
I'm not pressing a button.
Okay, cool.
I got 3 verses of scripture I want to share with you tonight. They're in Titus chapter 2, verse 11 through 13. For the grace of God that bringeth salvation hath appeared to all men, teaching us that denying ungodliness and worldly lust, we should live soberly, righteously, and godly in this present world, looking for that blessed hope and the glorious appearing of the great God and our Savior, Jesus Christ. These scriptures are teaching us things to avoid in life. It's also teaching us how we're supposed to live and conduct ourselves in this life, live a righteous life. It also teaches us or instructs us to be looking for the appearing of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. You see, we need to live what we believe. And if we believe this Bible, we need to live that way. Our behavior needs to be in line with our faith. We should be good examples to the people that are looking at us right now and the future generations to come. And we should do that by practicing forgiveness. Forgiveness is not because of our goodness, but because of the goodness of God. I want to leave you this question today. Are you ready to meet Jesus on Judgment Day?
Yeah, Pastor Lon said to offer you his profound apologies for all those guineas in the background, but he said, hey, he knows how much you hate guineas. So yeah, he didn't want to say a whole. No, yeah. Once again, hey y'all, go check him out on YouTube, Pastor Lon, Pastor Homesteading Pastor. That's where you can find him out. Great stuff, and he's talking about being sober-minded. But we'll get into the bad news, good news, which used to be bad news, good news section. Now it's all good news. And on the heels of what Pastor Lon said, well, one of the latest stories is popping up right now. Cocaine, they basically, okay, yeah.
What?
Well, he's talking about being sober-minded. Let me tell you who ain't. And that's somebody that dropped that bag of cocaine in the White House. Apparently, the first photos reveal that the cocaine found in the White House, and it shows this little blurry image, but they can't seem to find out who dropped it. Now, they can nab all the people that showed up to peacefully protest on January 6th,
right?
But you can't find out who dropped a bag of cocaine in the White House, for crying out loud. And I'm supposed to believe this.
You don't even need to get it on camera to know who did it. You already know who did it.
Well, it could be all of the above. I mean, but yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm sitting here thinking, okay,
man,
boy, you know, if you were a person thinking, now I got to be real careful about how I say this, you know, some person that might mean ill would be thinking, shoot, if they can't find out who dropped off a bag of Coke in the White House, we fill in the blank.
Yeah.
I'll just leave that one right there.
Yep.
All right. So yeah, it's not
that gets clipped.
We're getting shadow banned and demonetized enough already. So hey, remember, if you can't find us here on YouTube, go check us out on all the podcast platforms, because that's primarily where you see us. And not having the music tonight, man, that drives me crazy, because that Gap Band music in the beginning is balling. So we may have to figure out a plan B. All right. The other good news section, since we got rid of the bad news, dig this. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, duh, but hang in there. Good cardiovascular habits can knock 6 years off your biological age. Now, this is the part that goes without saying. I mean, obviously, they're telling you work out, do the normal things, but I keep hearing this thing over and over and over again.
Wait, Dad, hold on. Did you say that right?
Yes.
That
knock it off your biological age.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically, if you're 52 like I am,
yeah,
so you can drop 6 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I got you.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, I had to look at that one.
I thought you meant like you lose 6 years off your life.
Yeah, that's why I had to do a double. I had to do a double take on that article. But they go through the studies and they talk about basically at the end of the day, you know, sleep. That's what they get into. Something I never seem to get enough of. That's what a lot of people are talking about, these life hacks and stuff like that. And I'm going to talk. The next article actually has something to do with that as well. But yeah, that's what they're saying now. You know, before eggs were bad for you, now they're great. Margarine was great for you when I was a kid. Now it's awful. Well, I think everybody should have known it was bad back then.
Right. Yeah, it's almost plastic.
Well, here's another good article. 6 possible health benefits of deep breathing. Now, here's why I'm bringing this one up, y'all. Well, let me first tell you what the benefits are. First of all, lower your blood pressure, improve the quality of life with people with asthma and COPD. Number 3, help manage symptoms of depression and anxiety. Number 4, reduce tension to help with headaches. Number 5, irritable bowel syndrome. Okay. Yeah, I didn't know it was going to. Okay, hot flashes and all that kind of stuff. So they stop right there. So here's why I'm bringing this up. I've talked about these other life hacks, and things that you're not necessarily, remember, MD doesn't mean medical deity, even though a lot of MDs out there seem to think it does.
You notice they're practicing medicine.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe you don't need that kind of medicine to begin with. Let me get into what look, I brought Callie, the English lady that was on with me about a week ago. And she told you how she cured some of the worst cancer in the world, not only in her son, but a number of other people using chronic, or as some people might say,
weed.
Well, yeah, weed or some stuff like that.
CBD oil.
CBD, yeah. So depending on where you are in that spectrum, she healed it. Okay, that was a natural means of doing it. And I got to be honest with y'all, I've been trying this deep breathing stuff for about a year and a half now, I guess. Probably 2 years, really. And I've been doing strictly the Wim Hof breathing. Well, Michelle turned me on to this other guy, and and he's on YouTube. And some of it gets a little bit of woo-woo, but this one, I was tired as all get out. And this just happened day before yesterday. Or no, it was yesterday. I'm out having to do some running around with Michelle. And basically, this guy says, try this breathing method for 5 minutes, and it'll be like you drank a cup of coffee. I'm like, okay, that's a pretty high claim. I did it, and it was true. I'm dead serious. I was like, I told your mom before we left the house, I'm like, man, I don't know what's going on. I can't keep my eyes awake. I didn't get a whole lot of sleep, but I'm usually able to manage it better. I did this guy's deep breathing method, and I'm telling you what, it was like I drank a cappuccino.
Huh.
And so I did it again later on when I got tired all over again. And so today I was waiting, seeing if I would get tired, but I did his method earlier in the day. He has a bunch of different breathing modalities for whatever you're dealing with.
What's his name?
Breathe with Sandy, I think is his YouTube channel.
Okay.
Like I said, some of it gets woo-woo, but just pick out the one you like. And folks, I'm here to tell you, I don't know this guy. Nobody's telling me to promote him or something. I've been doing the Wim Hof thing, and then I finally got to the point where I think I kind of plateaued with the method I was using. I didn't realize there were other methods of breathing, whether it's this thing called box breathing, and it does something for you. Or there's this other breathing that Sandy did. Like I said, it was 5 minutes. I did that thing, and I honestly, I can't even begin to tell you the energy I had. And I'm like, okay, I got to be missing the boat on some stuff here. Well, obviously I am on a great many things. So now I'm looking into things like frequency modalities and stuff like this. I know I'm going a little bit long on this, but I know everybody's looking for ways. Look, whether it's grounding, going out there in your bare feet, getting those. Look, I'm a journeyman electrician. I've been an IBEW journeyman electrician for 25 years. Okay. I know a little bit about electricity. And when I understand how grounding, how putting your feet and your hands in the dirt on the bare soil, what that does to you mentally, that's free. Okay. Breathing, that's free. Okay. A lot of these things, these healing modalities are absolutely positively free. And the powers that shouldn't be don't want you or me or anybody else to know about them. And I'm going to keep seeking these people that have these wonderful ways of healing you, or maybe getting to the point where you don't actually become sick in the first place. So there's so many great things out there, y'all. Like I said, I don't know this Sandy guy, but all I do know that every breathing routine that I did from this guy has worked absolutely wonderful. So yeah, if anybody knows this Sandy, tell him Billy gives his regards. And I gotta say, I'm absolutely floored with how I felt. He's got another one where if you want to go to sleep, you try it. And he's got another one, and I'm like, really? It really works this way?
That's interesting. I'll have to try it out. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, I've been like a total. Your mom kept telling me about this guy, and then and like always with most of us, I'm like absolutely wiped out. I'm sitting in this truck, and I'm sitting here thinking, good night, man. I'm okay. I know part of the reason I was tired is I haven't been talking about healing modalities. It's in that 'tis the season kind of mode, and I'm up here packing on stuff because she won't quit cooking. And
she made a whole apple pie.
Yeah. And I tried to eat about half of it. So I'm sitting here eating a bunch of stuff. I'm like, okay, you got to put the brakes on this stuff. I've been eating this stuff and, starting to pay the piper. So I'm going to have to get myself back into shape. But the point being is that all these healing modalities are absolutely free. And everybody thinks you got to go, because that's the problem. Because if it's free, everybody thinks it's not worth anything.
Right. Or that it doesn't work, or it's just some woo-woo crap or something like that.
So give it a shot, y'all. I don't care what your ailment is. Put your feet on the bare dirt. Okay, that's number one. And get yourself a breathing routine. And I do this also, like the Wim Hof thing I was doing while I do my Bible study. So, find your way of doing it. Let me know how it works out for you. But I know for me, this is absolutely positively the way it's going. All right, y'all. So with that said, we'll get into the main topic when we come back. Next up is my man, Eric Sider.
Hey, Eric Sider here with your Pimpcast tip of the day. Today's tip, a sustainable diet. Bill Mollison said if you live in a city and don't have a garden or return your wastes to the farm where you get your food, it should be compulsory for you to eat free-range meat. A diet that doesn't return its wastes to the system requires massive energy inputs to maintain fertility. Traditionally, farmers only sold what could walk or fly off the farm, as exporting plants is exporting fertility. Most vegetation is inedible to humans, but animals do an amazing job converting that into meat and manure. Now, a vegetarian diet can be very efficient, providing they are based on easily cooked or processed crop grown in home gardens. That wastes, especially body wastes, are returned to the soil where we live and do not exploit others or incur large transportation costs. Omnivorous diets make the best use of complex natural systems and are more resilient to extremes of climate and disasters. There can be no moral absolutes that aren't universally applicable. There is only a small portion of the planet that can exist on plant-based diets without modern technology or massive energy inputs. So we should all be in agreement about eliminating industrial agriculture. And grain is almost always a product of industrial agriculture. A sustainable diet is not about what you eat. It is about how you grow it. You can find me on YouTube and Instagram at Eric Sider. And if you're in need of permaculture t-shirts or remote permaculture consultation and design, head over to ericsider.com.
That's my dog right there, y'all. Eric Sider. He's wearing the shirt William has on right now. He has some of the biggest conversation starter t-shirts you're ever going to find. So go check him out over there. You'll be glad you did.
Send that clip to your fellow vegan.
Yeah. I mean, hey, engage in whatever eating lifestyle that works for you. But yeah, I mean, it's the proof is kind of hard to argue with when you get down to brass tacks.
Yeah. Hey, I want to read this one comment real quick. Sandy Phillips is a straight up gangster. She said, I decided to go with the loud boom boom instead of just the pew pew. It didn't hurt the bear, but he knows that it's in his best interest to move on. She's dealing with bear issues on her property. She's out there blasting.
Well, I'm afraid I don't make a bear repellent yet. I've been trying to get my hands on some bears, right? But we'll hold the comments until we get to the Q&A part. All right, y'all. Remember, EMP Shield, $50 off with promo code PERMA. So, like I said, I'm a journeyman electrician, long time, but your number one threat is not necessarily an EMP. Well, notwithstanding the times we're in right now, but the number one threat to your home is always going to be lightning, okay? And if it gets past that EMP Shield down the way, they're going to cover you for 25 G's. So be sure to go over there, check out EMP Shield. And remember, promo code PERMA, PERMA, will get you $50 off. And remember, if you don't know what you're doing around the electricity, hire somebody like me. Well, it won't be me, but what I'm saying, an electrician, a qualified electrician, go out and do it. It's not that difficult, but honestly, I don't want to see anybody out there get Kentucky fried because you tried to put this thing on yourself and maybe you didn't have the expertise to make it happen. All right, so with that, we're going to jump right into the main topic. And man, it's funny because every time I hear something from Eric, every single time I'm wanting to change the topic of the show and make it over what he just talked about.
Yeah.
And I mean, as always, he knocks it out of the park, man. I mean, he's one of the sharpest guys you're ever going to know. So check him out there. Keeper of the old ways in the house. And hey, sorry if I'm missing some of y'all. It's just I'm able to look down and see what time it is every once in a while. All right, so I wanted to hit on it. We get so many questions about what do you do about this? What do you do about that? And in every single case, son, if somebody says, well, I got this problem, what's the first thing you're probably going to respond with?
It depends.
It depends. Every single time. And it's one of the most frustrating things out there for anybody asking the question. But truly, it does depend. Every single time, it absolutely depends. So, I mean, there's so many different factors to consider. But it doesn't have to be tough. It doesn't have to be complex. We can go down list by list of all the things you should probably do when you buy a property, when you acquire a property, or if you're already on a property. There's so many different ways you can go about it. But I wanted to kind of kick out some of the favorite permaculture methods that we use that are tried and tested, work great. And, William might have I just got a list of them here. Because honestly, everybody's saying, well, what about this? What about that? Look, right off the bat, I'm going to tell you right off the gate, depending on where you live, swales might be a really great idea for you. So, son, why don't you explain to them what a swale is?
Swale is just a water harvesting ditch on contour. So if you make a ditch that's perfectly level, has to be perfectly level with a J on either side, so it goes perpendicular to your level line uphill, and then everything you excavate out of that ditch goes directly on the downhill side. You just created a swale. But the issue is if you put it on, there's no land that's too flat for a swale, but there is land that's too steep for a swale. And I think that's a 20% grade. What is it again?
Yeah, I think that's about right. But
yeah,
well, it's not just there too, but tell them what a swale does. I mean, what's the benefit? So basically you got a big, I'll do this for the people on the screen, or I try to anyway. That ain't going to happen. Point is, imagine a ditch and then a little berm on the downhill side of it, son. Tell them what the function of it's supposed to be.
Well, as it rains, the water, if you get enough for a runoff, then it'll flow into your swale, and the swale will slow down the water and soak it back into the mound or just below the mound, and create a little reservoir for your trees. And if it's functioning well enough, usually it creates a spring downhill within 7 years.
So it should. If it's done correctly and give it time, it usually functions very well. It's going to recharge your aquifers. Like Eric Sider once said, I remember him telling me if he was a governor of California, because that's where he lives right now. He's like, if I were the governor of California, I'd have earth moving machinery running day and night, terraforming the landscape to make swales everywhere.
Right.
So that every drop of rain doesn't just run off and straight to the ocean. It's held. Remember, when energy hits your place, you can either capture it for a little while, you can deflect it, or you can amplify it. And sometimes you can do all three. So we're just letting this stuff hit the ground because we have no topsoil. Nothing's keeping it there. And then it's just rolling on out to the ocean. So swales are one of my big go-tos, depending on the environment. Now, we do live in a tropical rainforest, a temperate rainforest here. But right now, it seems like we've been in something of a drought as of late, which is why I haven't made any bone sauce lately. But the point of it being is that it doesn't always work. Number one, we already live in a place where rain is rather abundant, usually. And then also in a place where we live in steep mountain terrain. So it doesn't work everywhere here, even though ultimately this will ultimately be a demonstration site.
We have a question about swales. Do you want to answer it now? Okay, got this from Isle of View Homestead. Question: we live on a 6% grade, so we could do swales, but we're in the Rocky Top Ozarks. Is it safe to do swales in extremely rocky areas?
It depends.
I would say generally, yeah. Depending on like if you're pulling out boulders, then it's going to be difficult to make some swales. But if it's like smaller than that, then I would say generally, yeah. And you're eventually going to build up soil. If you're doing things right, you're going to eventually build up soil that's going to retain water and help that process along.
Well, it also depends on whether or not you're able to get through the rock. I mean, do you have rocky outcroppings that'll just totally mess you up? I mean, what's that part of Kansas out in middle Kansas? The Flint Hills. Yeah. I mean, if it's something like that, the reason why it still has the native grasses there is because of all the porous rock that's out there. So it all depends if you can get into that rock or not, or if it's such a giant outcropping, are you able to even dig it in the first place?
Now you might be able to like import the soil, you know what I mean? And creating, if it's on a 6% grade, that seems fairly safe. You might be able to import the soil, but you need to get roots in that soil immediately.
I was going to say the very same thing. Yeah. The problem is when you just take it like that and stick it on the top, you got to be, you want, first of all, you put in a swale, you want to plant it immediately.
Right. At least a cover crop.
Yeah. You want something down there to kind of hold that soil in place. And then you don't want the kind of collapse that's just going to destroy everything. So you want to make sure you get something on that soil as quickly as possible. But yeah, as far as permaculture methods, I love swales. It's a tree growing system and a half if it works for you. Or you could be like Stefan Well, your water table's so high, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for you there anyway.
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, and then, like I said, and then you got
Well,
cases like us.
it could, if you need to raise your, like the consultation I just did for Monica and Tanner out in South Carolina, they're in a circumstance where they need to raise their trees up so their trees don't drown. So a swale could be helpful that way as well. It can help store water and it can also help move water. So there's a few different options with the swale. If you need to raise up your soil level so your trees don't drown, plant them on top of the mound of your swale.
Yeah, swales are hard to beat. Our property in Texas, I mean, if anybody's ever seen some of the videos, I think it's going on.
Permaculture works. Proof Permaculture works is the video.
Yeah, I think we basically started a food forest there, left it alone, just basically got it off and running, walked away, didn't see it for 3 years, came back, and it's absolutely blowing up. Now, we're going on year 5 now. 4?
Yeah.
You sure about that?
Yep.
Yeah. I guess we're going on year 4 out there. And so we're going to have some news about that place and what's going on out there here before long. But the point is, while everybody was in drought, and that place obviously is in drought like everybody else, that swales that we installed out there have banked so much water that the trees on that property were essentially unaffected through all those years.
Yeah.
Even other things that, you know, that would ordinarily be highly affected by that were unaffected just by making sure you put in decent earthworks. So yeah, in places like Texas, California, I mean, the list is long. All throughout this country, we're just letting water just run out to the ocean when we could be banking it in the number one place, and that's our soil. Remember, for every 1% of organic matter you get down in there, that's the water retaining capabilities of an Olympic-sized swimming pool per acre. For every 1%, that's enormous.
Yeah,
that is enormous. So the best place to store water isn't necessarily in your rain barrels; it's down in the soil, and you do that by making good soil. That's how you go about doing it. All right. So, son, you got anything else you want to add? I mean, there's other methods like keyline and stuff like that, but we're not going to really get into that.
I mean, a yeoman plow, just briefly into keyline, like if you have like hundreds of acres or thousands of acres, swales might not necessarily make sense because that's a long ditch to dig, where like keyline using a yeoman plow going like, downhill at a 2% grade towards the ridge line, something like that. Doing that makes a lot more sense because you can just run your tractor through one pass and that's your trench. You don't have to go through and dig with an excavator.
Well, if you're going to do all that too, I would make sure, I mean, if you were going to do a keyline plow, I'd make sure I'm putting some serious stuff down in there behind it too.
What do you mean? Are you talking about like soil amendments or okay?
Yeah, I'd be putting in some serious. I talked at the beginning of this program with compost extract. If you're running a yeoman's plow, you just as well be spraying some compost extract down in there, especially if the soil isn't all that wonderful.
Yeah,
because that's exactly what it's designed to do.
You could just if you're on your tractor, you have your yeoman's plow attached to it. You could pull a tank behind that and have it be dumping, compost extract or compost tea down in the soil, which is getting past. Hopefully, your yeoman's plow is deep enough to get past the compaction layer.
Well, we have something of an emergency question here. Sandy Phillips is asking: is the wildfire still burning on the mountain? You know something I don't know because we live on this mountain.
I don't know. Oh, maybe I know. Last podcast I brought up that those fire trucks driving past that last time. I never heard anything about that fire though. There was a guy I do jujitsu with that he's a forest ranger or something like that, but he didn't bring that back up. So I don't think it was, and he was at jujitsu, so couldn't have been that bad.
Well, that's one of the considerations, by the way, in permaculture that you'll design for is if you're in a place where fire is an issue, well, you also design for that because we're also in one of those places. We live on the side of a mountain and they have this very invasive Chinese silvergrass, and there's certain parts of our property where it's taken over. Only for a short while because I know that it doesn't like a fungal system. So it's just a matter of time before I get it out of there. But the point being is that, number one, it's only there because the soil is degraded. I mean, it's not great right now. So it's kind of got a little bit of a foothold there for now. And then it's going to head on down the line.
They're saying Justin Rhodes has fires by him. So I guess it's like on the other side of Asheville.
Well, okay. Just make sure that's not a photo op either. Yeah, I said it. Yeah. Make sure that's not some camera tricks going on there. Because
man,
Yeah.
He hired it. Never mind. I can't go there.
Yeah.
I
Anyway,
can't make that joke.
So let's talk about another method, permaculture method. And like y'all, I mean, y'all, this is a very short list. I'm just talking about some of the most prominent ones we use on a daily basis. So high density grazing is another thing we do. It can be done with just about every animal out there. And you can do it in such a way to where you don't need a mower. You just need management.
Yeah.
So you can take some of the worst soil in the world, and believe me, this place was nothing to write home about. And just through high density grazing, did it good, and then did it better, and then made a couple of tactical errors, and then kind of went backwards. But when you know how to do it, it's easy to correct. And it's really just moving your animals through that landscape. Yeah, I mean, there's mob grazing, there's so many different variations on the grazing. But look, at the end of the day, if you just take your animals and you move them depending on time of year, whether it's every day, every couple of days or whatever, when the grass is growing fast, you move your animals fast. When the grass is growing slow, you move your animals slowly. That's a general pretty good rule of thumb if you just remember it that way.
Every 1 to 3 days.
Generally.
Yeah. I mean, these are very general statements about grazing.
Yeah, you could be
because it depends.
Right. Yeah, it depends. But I don't like to leave an animal in a place more than 3 days because they're going to wind up back grazing, So let's say they ate a piece of grass. This is kind of important. So they eat a piece of grass, and obviously it's going to need to recover. What you don't want is for them to go back, because that growth cycle in the grass starts kicking after about 3 days. So now it's on its new growth cycle, and then the animal goes back and takes a second bite before that grass is ready to harvest again. So that's the problem you have when you do that sort of thing. So that's why generally we don't leave anything in one spot for more than 3 days, because they are going to go back for that second bite, and that's how you mess up landscapes. That's why the people that take a bunch of cows and put them out in there, and then like it's what Greg Judy calls the Columbus method. Then they go find them in the fall. They put them out in the spring, find them in the fall.
Yeah.
And that's what he calls the Columbus method. I'm basically messing it up, but I think you get the point there. All right. So here's another little method out there that we're big fans of: chicken tractor on steroids. Okay?
Yeah.
Done. I mean, there are so many different chicken raising modalities out there. Chicken tractor on steroids we're probably the world's experts. I'm not saying this to brag. I'm saying it to point out the fact that we're probably the world's experts on the chicken tractor on steroid system, because to my knowledge, nobody's done it more or tested that system more than we have. And so far, the only chickens that don't work in that system, I haven't even tried them, would be the Cornish crosses, because they just don't have the physicality to be able to jump up and get the compost and the whole 9 yards.
We've raised enough Cornish crosses to just know that they're not going to work in the system, because like week 8, they can't move really.
No,
they don't do very well.
You got to have a bird that behaves like a bird, but that's why I love that system, is that we've done those red broilers. We've done every bird short of a Cornish cross we've done, and they have done fantastic in that system. Now, I will say that you're going to need if it's just a regular layer, you're probably going to need about 32 birds, dual purpose birds. And I'm talking on a cubic yard or sometimes 2 to 3 cubic yards of compost. If you're doing something in the neighborhood of, let's say, dual purpose birds, 21 to 28, depends on the breed. And then when you're going to straight meat birds, honestly, you can get away with about 15 to 20 birds. Now, I've adjusted my numbers over the time, because honestly, the bigger birds move more material. So the ideal bird in the system like that is a very, very different thing. I need a bird that can move compost and go hunt for its food. Has to be a good forager. If they're not a good forager, they're not going to work in the system. But I'd love to try those Bressies, but I have yet to see a bird that didn't work in that system. Now, the benefit of it is, obviously, as we've talked before, you're producing when it's off and running, producing 1 to 3 cubic yards of compost a week, getting all the eggs you want for free. And at the same time, I mean, getting if you wanted to raise, I was thinking about doing that system again in such a way to where you can extract out your meat birds in the system and keep it going nonstop. You could absolutely positively do that.
I'm also curious to see like what other species of bird would work in that system. Like how much compost could a turkey move? You know what I mean?
Well, turkeys get about 50% of their diet off the landscape. I don't know how well they would work in that system. I don't think their guts set up to
I don't know.
process the same kind of stuff that a chicken would.
I'm just curious to see what other like species of birds would work.
Well, the beautiful thing about this system is that from what we've learned already, okay, we figured out that, you don't necessarily need cow manure to make this thing work. You can do it entirely on chicken manure, but we got a very precise set of steps that you want to know how to do before you get off and running on that sort of thing. But the point of it being is that that's another one of those golden permaculture methods, and that really can make all the difference in the world, especially at this time where things are costing a fortune. You're paying more for it. They put less in the bag, and you got less money to spend.
Yeah.
So everybody and your great grandmother, that's why as of late, I've done these videos about where to go to get your animal feed for free, where to get your carbon for free. All these things we've been working on for years. And I'm glad, okay, let me say this carefully. I'm not glad that anybody's suffering out there. I find it appalling that the powers that shouldn't be, they're living in their mansions and they're doing their things, and they're, I don't have a problem with a person living a good life, but the problem is the same people that are telling us to eat bugs eat steak every night. So if you want to eat bugs, knock yourself out. Homie, don't play that.
Yeah.
I ain't eating no bugs.
Not on purpose. Yeah. Not on purpose.
No, I'm not going to sprinkle any on top of my salad, if you dig.
I'll try some of those. Like Joel Thomas was talking about some cricket snacks that supposedly taste good. I'll try it just to, as like a novelty thing, but it's not about to be a staple. If bugs become a staple, then y'all listen to the wrong doggone podcast.
No. Hey, I don't care what they taste like. I'm never gonna know because I ain't eating no bugs.
Apparently, there's something that tastes like Cheetos.
I don't care if I don't care if Chef Ramsay put it together. I ain't eating bugs on purpose. Now, I'm sure I have. Now, I don't know if snails count because I put the hurt on some escargot. Yeah, but
they count.
Yeah, I guess they're kind of bugs.
Now, what's an ant,
Dad? A lobster.
Yeah.
A lobster is kind of a
sea bug.
Yeah, it's like a big bug. All right, another little method, instant garden. Yeah, that's one of those ones for a lot of you folks that are thinking about, oh, shoot, how do I get involved in this space? Where do I even start? That's one of the biggest things I give to people right out of the gates. Try Jeff Lawton's Instant Garden. Jeff, Geoff, Lawton, Lawton. His Instant Garden is a really awesome method for those who are just trying to figure out, never did a garden before, even if you have. Here's one of the cool things I like about an Instant Garden is that the subsequent years we've done this, instead of going back there pulling the weeds or whatever, you just put it on top. Just cover it all up with the next Instant Garden, and you're building soil at an unbelievable pace just by doing that.
I think that's the most valuable tool in permaculture. I know there isn't supposed to be like a most valuable tool, but I haven't really found a place where a variation of instant garden / sheet mulching doesn't work or it doesn't benefit the area.
We had
like there are some complaints that sheet mulching and stuff like that increases the fire ants, but your fire ants are typically working in a place where your worms don't do as well. So they're your tillers in the ground, basically.
Or maybe the fire ants, and it may have been Stefan actually that came up with this. Maybe those fire ants are doing that exchange for you that ordinarily worms would do.
Maybe,
because,
yeah.
Maybe they are actually taking that material, putting it underground. You just find a way. Look, you ain't ever going to get rid of the fire ants in, let's say, Texas and some of the places in the South. So maybe you find a symbiotic way to work with them. Unless you got an anteater on hand, you're just going to have to deal with them.
They might taste good. I don't know.
Well, I'll never know. But the point being is that
I wonder, so earthworms, everything they come into contact is beneficial afterwards, basically. I wonder how many other macro arthropods there are in the soil that do the same thing. Like, I wonder if ants do the same thing. I wonder if they're the same benefit to the soil that earthworms might be.
Well, if we put 1/1000th of the effort into figuring out what's up with our soil life as we do in the murdering people throughout the planet,
yeah,
I think we'd have an answer to a lot of these questions. I think, like Jeff Lawton said, the whole world's problems can be solved in a garden. And that's exactly the reason why they don't want you to know about it. But yeah, Instant Garden is one you want to take away. That is a really good one too. And then it's funny that he was just in here. I don't know if Stefan's still in the podcast, but I was going to say Food Forest. Big fan of Food Forest, orchards. like I said, once again, had the great pleasure of being there. That's one of those methods. The one thing I love so much about food forests and orchards and things of that nature is that for all of us that come from the preparedness tradition, what a lot of people tend to forget is their resupply. I don't know why everybody's all about bullets and beans per se, but they don't worry about resupply.
Yeah.
And so that's where a food forest can really come in, where you put the food forest in, you got a lot of great stuff, you got a lot of great perennials coming up, and you can get an incredible harvest without having to put in a bunch of energy. Now, if you would like to and go out there and prune a bunch of stuff, I mean, if you want to make an orchard, that's fine. But if you want to go out there and get a pretty respectable harvest with not a ton of effort having to be thrown into it, well, hey, I don't want to lead you down the wrong way. It does need it takes a few years before it's off and running. Don't buy the food forest in a box from the Texas boys, throw it all on the ground and then wonder why it didn't come up. It does require some of your care to start with.
Yeah. Hey, we have a question about sheep mulching real quick. You want to ask it? Question. Dr. Linda Chalker Scott says not to use cardboard for sheep mulching, as they can introduce anaerobic conditions. Thoughts?
I think that's absurd.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely absurd. That's like perfect. Cardboard really is meant to be put back on the ground and like wet it down and put mulch over the top of it. It attracts worms like crazy. If it's anaerobic, it's not anaerobic long, and you almost want it to be, I would want it on the wetter side than the drier side, because your cardboard, depending on your location, can be anaerobic. It could be hydrophobic, not anaerobic. It could be hydrophobic at first. So it helps if you already break that barrier and get it wet first, and then it can naturally wick moisture when it needs to. It can absorb moisture if it needs to, all that.
Okay, I'll put it this way. Take a stack of cardboard, stick it on the ground. Here's how you can basically prove that to be false. Take a stack of cardboard, stick it on the ground, leave it there for a year. If it's still there, if you got a lot of life in that soil, there probably won't be a whole lot of it left. Pull that cardboard up, and what do you see? You see a bunch of organisms that only survive in an aerobic environment.
You'll see a bunch of roly-polies. You'll see a bunch of worms that are going back down into the soil.
So if
you'll see a bunch of stuff.
If it was anaerobic, you would not see. I could take that, stick it. I don't have to look under a microscope, but I could. But yeah, there's a lot of, this is the part that's really driving me crazy, is that so many people are out there. I don't know who this person is, but at the end of the day, there's so many people, and I'm not faulting you if that's what you heard. The point that I'm getting at, hey, SOE's in the house too. My man, John, what's up?
Hey, John.
Yeah, so many people are going on saying, people are just so doggone confused because they don't know, okay, I heard this from this person. I heard this from that person. They have no way to go. But yeah,
an important part of the bigger guys showing up, like the worms and the roly-polies and all that stuff, is that they are apex predators in the soil food web. So if you have apex predators, like you don't see wolves in the environment without there being a ton of deer. You don't see, or a ton of elk or something like that. So as soon as they start eating the prey, as soon as they start eating or get that nutrient cycling going, then you're actually fertilizing your plants.
I know there's so much confusion out there, and I know a lot of us, especially getting into this space, if you're new to it, you're looking for a unified field theory. And I wish there were one, and that's what we're working on. I mean, I'm not so arrogant to believe that we'd ever come up with one, but my point being is it would be nice if somebody just said, I'll put it this way. Go to Elliot Coleman, let's say. Look at what he does. Replicate it. Don't change anything. Don't change the recipe. Just do the recipe. But so many people change the recipe along the way. Just do that recipe. Or better still, go check out the Permaculture Orchard. Yep, he's got a course online. Go to Stefan Sokowiak's online course. I don't know if he actually kicked it off yet, but I got an early copy of it. Do what he says step by step. Master the basics. And then later on down the line, when you have some experience, then go on. Just take one person's method and then find out whether or not it works. Don't try to change anything, which everybody seems to do. If you doubt me, go to Food Network right now. Pick any recipe, and all the negative reviews, what do they have in common? They didn't actually do the recipe. They'll change 50% of the ingredients and say, oh, this recipe sucked.
Yeah.
Because they didn't actually do it. And that's exactly what we run into. Everybody's wanting to change things before they have a really good grasp and an understanding on the techniques. I didn't mean to go so long on that, but let's go into that food forest area real quick before we go into the Q&A. So food forest, once again, y'all, especially in these times, we're living at a time where everybody feels like we're on shaky ground. Prices are going through the roof and they're only going to get worse. So can you think of a better thing to do than grow food, like what you're going to find in a food forest that you don't put anywhere near the effort in that you do an annual crop?
But your food forest also attracts food. Like we could have shot a rabbit every single day and not put a dent in the population, and that's with bone sauce. I mean, I just pulling up into the driveway the other night. I can't remember which day it was, but there were 2 deer hopping. I mean, they weren't messing with any of the trees, but they were at least in the pasture kind of checking it out. Actually, I think they were checking out the bees more than anything. But your food forest is going to attract food. So there's like, if you're not good at grazing yet, or if you don't have any ruminants or anything like that, your protein source could be what's attracted to the food forest.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. All right, y'all, we're going to go to Chef Keith Snow, and we back into the Q&A.
Hey, Chef Keith Snow, your Pimpcast tip of the day: building food security. Don't forget the dairy. Dairy should be an important component of your food storage plan. I keep several types of storable dairy. Here are just a few: powdered whole milk, powdered sour cream, powdered buttermilk, and powdered cheese. I also store both evaporated canned milk and aseptic boxes of whole milk. These are good for a few years easily, and then I just use them up and replace them. Don't be fooled into thinking storable foods need to last for 25 years. Just rotate through these foods and be sure to use your pantry each week for at least a few meals to feed the gang. It can save a ton of cash. Last week, I used some dairy to make some pasta dishes. This week, maybe I'll make rice and beans. Next week, canned chili. You get the point. Remember, don't get caught with your pantry down. Become a student at foodstoragefeast.com and save 30 bones with the coupon code PERMA. Take care.
That's my man, Chef Keith Snow. Man, that's almost a tongue twister every time I say
Snow.
Yeah, say that 10 times in a row.
He doesn't even say it.
Yeah. Yeah, even he slows down on the beginning of it. And it's his name. How about that? Yeah, we'll get to some of the Q&As in here. But hey, this segment of the show brought to you by TexasBoys.com, y'all. Go check them out. They got the food forest in the box. I know a lot of people are asking, where do I go to get trees this time of year? Well, if you can smuggle them in from Canada or anywhere else, knock yourself out.
Yeah.
Or there are other ways of going about it. And right now, it's like most of them are dried up. So Texas Boys, go over there, use the promo code PERMA, save yourself about 5%. They got the food forest in the box. They sell meat. They got a lot of real cool stuff over there. Go check them out. Tell them Billy sent you. You'll be glad you did. All right. So with that, y'all, we're going to jump straight into Q&A.
Yeah, let me ask this before it disappears. From Ben Lambert, can I use horse manure for compost?
You can
Absolutely.
Use it. Well, yeah, it depends on what you've been feeding those horses. Are they being given a bunch of Grazon? Have they been hit up with a bunch of dewormer? Because William was just saying a moment ago, one of your top predators in that soil, believe it or not, is a worm. Yeah, that's like right at the top of the soil food web. So if you've been giving your horses a bunch of dewormer, well, you're going to knock out. That's what a lot of people don't. Yeah, you're getting the worms out of the animal, but you're also getting the worms out of the soil. You're killing them too. And then you just killed the top predator. So what happens? Same thing in the wild. You get rid of all the, okay, so what happens? You get rid of the wolves. And then what happened in Yellowstone years ago? The deer population went off the chain, and then they died. A bunch of them died. So it's the same exact thing. Same exact thing. It's a microcosm of what's happening above, so below, so to speak, Yeah. So it works the same exact way.
Yeah. Did you have any questions?
Oh, go right ahead, man.
Oh, okay. Another one from Three Little Goats Homestead. Question: any suggestions on trying to grow vegetables and fruit trees when you have black walnut trees everywhere?
You know what? I was asking Greg Judy about that. Yeah, it's crazy because Greg Judy, when I was at his farm in Missouri, Clark, Missouri, as I recall, I was hitting him up and he was talking. I was like, man, wait, hang on. Why do you have all this growth around black walnuts? He said, well, nobody ever told them about it.
Yeah.
And then he had a good point there. I was like, huh. And all the black walnuts we've ever been around, I mean, there's always dead stuff all the way around it.
And now that we know what we know from, these soil classes, like soil is very, very, very site specific. Like within inches, it's very site specific. Like an inch closer to the root could be completely different than an inch further away from the root because the root is putting out exudates. So you might, if you get the soil right, the black walnut might not, like the allelopathic, whatever it's leaching into the soil, might not have an issue because your microbes might be able to balance that out.
That's what Greg was talking about. John says over at SOE, yeah, they put in 30 more trees today, man. Glad to hear that.
Wow.
He said at least Kerry Brown put them in. Yeah. Hey, man, every time I hear somebody planting trees, anything that's going to be perennial, man, remember how good those figs were at his place, man?
Oh, yeah.
They were massive and they tasted good. Figs are one of my favorites. Folks, and like I said, I know there's so many people say, I don't like figs. Well, you haven't tried a fresh fig. If you haven't had a fresh fig, if you haven't had them fresh, you don't know what it's like. And if you bought that junk in the store, that's not a real fig. So, yeah, when it comes to this allelopathic nature, I'm wondering, like William's saying, if the soil's right, then maybe you have less concern about that, because I will say that Greg Judy's organic matter in that pasture was off the chart.
Yeah, you said it was like walking on a mattress, right?
Yeah, it was.
Pastures.
Yeah, some of those places. Yeah,
he's had to replace fence because he's built soil so much. That's
something else.
A freaking statement.
Yeah, yeah, something we can all learn from.
Yeah, got one from Mr. Daryl Colson. Actually, Dad, do you want me to read this? It's about what happened 150 years ago regarding the Bible. All right. 150 years ago, John Darby, Plymouth Brethren, inserted the theology of a rapture prior to the tribulation/time of Jacob's trouble. Along with the help of C.I. Schofield and D.L. Moody, I would say they took away the admonition. Admonition. That is a hard word to say. And urgency to be prepared for the tribulation to come.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. And I know I'm not gonna win any fans for this, but look, 150 years ago, I didn't say it because I wanted people to do the work, a couple of podcasts ago, to figure out exactly what I was talking about. Even the Bible says, study to show thyself approved unto God. That also can apply in other ways. So when it comes to that doctrine, which, people will break fellowship over, I'm not one of them. I'm just saying it didn't exist before Darby and the Plymouth Brethren and all these other people. I seldom talk about it because I'm trying not to lose people on this, but look at what it's done. That doctrine is basically taken so many people and said, well, I'm not going to do anything about it. Jesus is coming back soon. Well, what happened to occupy till he comes? You know what? They thought he was coming back in the first century too. And here we are 2,000 years later.
It's not even that they don't want to prepare for what may or may not happen. It's turned them into honestly, most men into complete cucks, where they're just going to sit by and watch and just let whatever happen to them because they think they're going to get raptured the last second. Well, and they're not going to actually take any action.
Well, it basically made a lazy population. And some of the worst are Christians. I'll be honest with you. Like I said, I know I'm not going to win any fans for this, but since when do I care about that? That doctrine alone has made more. Everybody's saying, well, I'm just going to go ahead and, I know that's not the mindset of everybody, and that's not everybody that's on there. But if I had a nickel for all the people that I know that say, well, I'm not going to do anything, Jesus is coming back. Yeah, well, what about the Armenian Christians? What about those? There's a whole lot of people down in the world right now in China. Where's their rapture? You think it's a Western construct. I don't want to go too deep down that rabbit hole, but that's why I just said it happened 150 years ago. Do your research on it. And my man, you hit it out of the park.
Yeah. Got one from Big. You have any, Dad?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Jay says, good morning, Billy. Hope all is well. Just finished watching the video about the Texas boys tree cuttings. Thank you so much for the new contact. I'm going to be starting a berry patch, blackberries, blueberries, etc., and was about to begin to order plants. So it was very timely. So he ordered perfect. That pack. Yeah. So I'm glad. There's a whole lot of people out there that are not at all getting trees. Maybe they can't afford them. And let's be honest here, man, there's some gouging going on.
Yeah.
Because I know when you planted that tree, I know the process in tree planting, and I know what the cost is, and I know what they're doing right now. They're taking a 1 year plant, putting it in a 10-gallon pot,
Yeah.
and you're charging a fortune with it, and that's cold-blooded.
Talking about the nurseries and stuff like that. The potted plants, you really get ripped off on potted plants because all it is a bare root that they put in a pot, and you're basically paying for the fertilizer that they've added to it.
Well, you don't know that that's what they did. You can go buy a bare root if you can. You
can see the little green balls that they have in there, in the pots. I mean, got one from Big Daddy Don. Thank you so much for an informative pimp cast. I will say this: that wars are nothing more than blood sacrifices to the wicked one. All the powers that should not be are using us as sacrifices to appease the ruler of darkness. Even though I served 9 years in the U.S. Air Force, it will be a cold day in hell before I let any of my grandchildren be drafted.
Don, I love that dude, man. I got to meet him and his family at the Kentucky gathering. By the way, Don, check out that shirt I'm wearing. You might no, I mean, he's wicked smart, and his kids, his grandkids, man, they were just a joy. Man, is so talented. And the little girl had everybody in tears when she was singing. But the point being, I'm right there with you, Don. I'm not playing along. I'm not just like Callie, that English lady. Bear said the same thing on this podcast about the rapture. Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Oh, well.
John, I mean, I had no idea Bear said anything about that. I didn't know he talked about it. But yeah, that's exactly what it did. It created a bunch of lazy, hey, I don't need to do anything. I'm getting out of here.
Yeah.
It's like staying at a dead end job, you know? Man, I better not go. So I'll go back to the previous thing regarding what Don said. I'm right there with you. I ain't going over there. Look, I guess maybe I'll just leave it right there because I know they're probably going to demonetize this one like they did the last 5 videos.
Yeah. Got one from B-Lin Mad for DX, I guess. Don't know what is going on with the YouTube. Could not see the live stream comments, sadly. So if you're listening to this after we've already recorded it and already done the live stream, and you're watching it on mobile, then there should be a section right next to the, there should be a button right next to the share, the like, all that stuff that says live stream. Now you can either have it all show up all at once, or you can have it played live as you're watching it. So if you just look for it, there's a comment section and then there's a live stream chat section. So click on the live stream chat section and you should be good to go.
Big B's asking, can you outline the basics of a black locust tree, please? A friend of mine has a bunch of root shoots and was wondering if it might be salvageable. Yeah, so the virtues of a black locust, well, I love them so much. Number one, if you're coming up on that time of year where you're going to put some stuff in the fireplace. I don't know of anything that burns hotter than black locust. That stuff will burn like nobody's business.
Yeah, it could actually cause issues in your wood burning stove, apparently. Like it can get too hot if you just load it up with black locust.
Yeah, so you got to be careful. And when we go to bed at night and I'm loading this thing up, black locust is what I'm putting in there to get us through the night. That way I know I got coals in the morning. I can fire it up real easy. And black locust, nothing burns hotter, but you got to be, like William said, we'll adjust the damper to make sure it's right. Other virtues, it can be used as a fence post. It's also a nitrogen fixer, meaning that it takes that atmospheric nitrogen and puts it down into the soil for the benefit of your other things around it. Okay. Those are just some of the quick virtues. Anyway, some of our animals eat it. The sheep would like to eat it from time to time. And there's just so many awesome virtues about it. Another cool thing is, like a lot of other nitrogen fixers, we coppice it, okay, or we pollard it, and then it comes right back. So in the past, we used to think that when we coppiced anything, that basically when you chop it off, that it basically self-prunes its roots. We now know or suspect that that's not the case anymore. Instead of that, the tree shoots down a bunch of exudates into the roots to the benefit of everything else around it. And the microorganisms go gangbusters. And next thing you know, you got good growth of everything else around it. So it's a great symbiosis. Sounds like God knew what he was doing.
Yeah. Got one from Sue Ann Kritzer. Question, is there a leaf you should not use for composting?
Certain oak trees, man, I can't think of them right now because I'm on the spot. Certain oak trees, man, it's hard. It's forever and a day. If somebody knows in the chat, let me know. I don't have time to look it up right now.
Now, would it be enough for you to not collect those leaves for compost? Especially if it's in the fall after it's already gone through it. It's in the highest carbon content it's going to be. All the nitrogen, all that stuff is left basically out of the leaf. What do you think? You still think it's an
I
issue?
would avoid it. I would avoid it if I could. But at the end of the day, well, I know there's a lot of that stuff. Oh my goodness, the rhododendrons. I don't think they break down so much.
Yeah, the rhododendrons don't like those thick, waxy leaves.
Yeah,
like thick, waxy, like magnolia leaves, holly leaves, stuff like that. Those thick, waxy leaves, they don't compost down as well. They're a little bit harder to break down.
Somebody says, Chris says, do you do anything special over the winter to overwinter comfrey, and when can you propagate it? Okay, so no, we don't do anything special over the winter. If you can work the soil, like it'll just go dormant, it'll die back, and then before you know it, bam, it's off and kicking in the spring. And as far as do we do anything to and when can you propagate it? Now you're going to hear a lot of stuff. Now we use the Bocking #4 Russian comfrey. Yeah. Animals love it. You know, great everything. So it's the strain we absolutely love. So when it comes to propagation, some people will tell you wait a year, wait two.
No,
man,
it's been months. Like we've waited like a couple months. I've harvested the same plant of comfrey multiple times this 6 month period.
Yeah, I don't know who came up with some of that stuff, but as long as you take a crown and you put it back,
yeah,
you're going to be off and running.
And even if you don't, it's eventually going to come back because you never harvest all of the comfrey. There's always like a root tip that you break off or something like that, or a root hair that just turns into a whole plant by itself. So that should also be a cautionary tale for if you're propagating comfrey in a delicate area that you don't want comfrey to take over in. Got one from Summerhill Homestead. How long can you store / keep a bare root tree before planting it?
Bare root tree before planting. You know, I really don't know.
See, because there have been some.
I would heal it in.
I mean, there's been some, like I've heard horror stories where people like left it in their garage all winter, forgot about it, noticed it was spring, saw it, and then planted it, and the tree survived. So I think it depends on the moisture level. I wouldn't wait longer than a week though.
If you can heal it in, go ahead and do that. I mean, I never left one around long enough to find out. Hey son, there was one from the Keeper of the Old Ways, but I can't even get to it. Yeah, they got a real good festival down there in Alabama.
He says, question, we have 4 ponds on our property that have to have water pumped in. So we knock down the 2 that will not hold water. All would like to turn them into pasture. Any suggestions? So you knock down, yeah, that really depends.
We have 4 ponds on a property. Yeah, there's a whole lot of variables there. I wish we could help you, but that's really something you got to see. The complexity of a question like that is a little more than we could probably cover in a podcast like this.
I mean, just generally, depending on how flat the landscape is, if you knock down the 2 ponds and it's generally flat, like relatively flat, and you're not getting any sinkage or anything like that, you could put down carbon and seed over the top of it.
Hard to say, man. You got to look in something like that.
I would definitely seed no matter what, because you did just create a disturbance with the soil, and you want to replace that disturbance with preferable varieties instead of just whatever pops up.
Once again, all depends. I mean, there's a lot of complexity in a question like that. So you're gonna have to scroll down a little bit, son, because I can't.
Hold on, Dad. I'm gonna have to. Yeah, Dad. I'm trying to look at this at 2 different angles. I gotta. Oh no, that was the one we just read. Rachel Brown saying, "Don't forget to slap that like button like it owes you money."
Bam! That's what I'm talking about, Rachel. Yeah. So there's a lot of good stuff going on.
Palmetto Paratrooper said, I had a dozen bare root trees sitting for 2 weeks before I planted them. They all did fine.
Yeah, I've heard stories like that. I just never, I can't even answer that because I never let them sit around. I mean, when they get here, if they're not getting planted immediately, like I said, you can heal them in. You can do that until you're able to do it. But honestly, I just don't understand the notion of just letting them sit. I mean, yeah, you may be tied up with work or whatever.
Yeah, you might get busy, and that's understandable. But and usually they set it, depending on which nursery you buy it from, they send it with this weird gel packed around the roots that holds moisture for quite a while, or moistened sawdust or fine wood chips or something like that.
Well, I ordered trees out of the Pacific Northwest before, and they were apple trees. And I mean, I've had them come every kind of way, man. It's sawdust and newspaper, you name it.
I got one from Buck. I live in the Kansas Flint Hills where Osage orange, aka hedge trees, are plentiful. They are the highest BTU and hardest wood in the USA.
Yeah, I think you're. I was gonna.
Didn't we try to cut some down in Texas at one point?
That stuff is nasty, man. And that stuff is. I didn't know if it was Osage orange, Bodark. That's what some people call it, also. But man, that stuff will tear. I don't know how anybody deals with that stuff. Dealt with it before, but yeah, I've heard that stuff is the hottest stuff out there. I knew it was touch and go whether it was black locust or Bodark. I didn't know.
I think it's. Yeah.
I didn't know which one was higher, but hey, either one of them, pretty doggone good.
Got one from JS Badger. Best first steps for relatively raw land when starting out. Best places to research info. The Permaculture Design Manual, I would say, is the best. That's going to give you like an order of events that you should follow, like generally that you should follow, although it's going to tell you to focus on water first. Access structures. I would focus on, and I'm sure Dad would agree, focus on access first, because having the water doesn't do you much good if you can't get to it. And depending on what water it is, you might have to develop access to even get to the water point.
Yeah. Yeah, I have no quarrel with that.
Ben Baker says the local hardy fruit tree places says to soak them in a pail of water for an hour and then plant them right away. Just Have Fun says, any tips on blueberry plants? Already use tons of wood chips.
Yeah, try to make it as fungal as possible.
Right.
Everybody talks about acid and stuff like that with the blueberries. Yeah, I get that. I understand it, but I'm putting very acidic loving things next to things that don't necessarily love acid. So it's telling me that once you get that soil life right, it kind of determines. There was a guy in the Pacific Northwest also that really woke me up to that. And his name is, oh shoot, I can't think of his name right now, but he's up in Oregon, well, Washington State, I believe. Anyway, essentially his work is kind of overlaying with Dr. Ingham's, where it's basically, it's not trying to provide these acidic things in the soil. It's putting the life in there and the plant gets to decide.
Yeah, because the plant will tell the microbes exactly what it wants,
right?
And the microbes are willing to go get it because they're being fed the exudate from the plant.
Yep. Somebody's asking about a book list on the community tab.
I was just about to read that one.
I haven't done that. I mean, I really ought to. Yeah, I really need to get that done. So many people hit me up, but the list is so doggone long that I can never really pin it down. Look, at the end of the day, I'll tell you a really good book to start with, and I tell everybody to start with this book. And I love it, not just because of the information there, but it really sums up everything to me in permaculture, and that's One Straw Revolution by Masanobu Fukuoka. That book is so inspiring to me because, number one, it was originally written in Japanese, but the prose, the beauty of language, and the information conveyed in it even comes across as translation. So to me, that book has always spoken to me, and it basically sums up and encapsulates what permaculture to me is all about. And it's not a hard read. It's a short read, and it demonstrates the genius of that great man. And that's, if you're going to start with any book, that's definitely at the top of the list for me. I absolutely love it. All right, y'all. I guess that's going to do it for us tonight. Thanks so much for everybody in the chat. Thanks everybody that's going to be listening out there. Hey, remember, until next time, y'all, stay alert.
Stay alive.
Just a carbon copy, she's spitting at me. Yeah, I'm talking softly. All they want to build is a prison world full of pet kamikaze. Got me out of body like I'm Goku SS3. They want to push me to the center like a cell. They want to swing up at the center of the next is me. I'm